Singleton returned late in the afternoon of the fourth day, and plans were made to go carefully through the underground workings the day following. During that evening I felt as if I were being tremendously charged with a dynamic electrical current. Nada had brought her Arabic musical instrument, and she and Rex entertained us royally after dinner. At 9 o'clock the next morning, we went to the shaft house and met Singleton, who was waiting there ready to take us into the mine. We entered the cage and descended to the 400-foot level. Here we went through various tunnels and crosscuts. As we were going through one tunnel that led to the southwest, I suddenly felt an electrical current pass through me. I stopped, and turning to Singleton, said, "What does this formation contain toward the north at this point?" "There is only country rock," he replied, "between these two veins. They are about 400 feet apart at the surface, with apparently very little dip." We started to pass on, but without the others seeing me, I marked the place with blue chalk. We then went to the 600-foot level and continued to go through the various workings. We came to a tunnel leading to the southwest, and almost under the spot where I had felt the current 200 feet above, I felt it again, but more powerful than before. I looked to my right and saw an intense blue light with a center of molten gold. This stood out clear and bright upon the wall of the tunnel. I marked the spot quickly, and at the same moment my inner sight was greatly quickened. I saw clearly through the rock what seemed to be a great cavity between the two main veins at least 200 feet apart. The opening was fully 200 feet high and nearly the same in circumference. A stringer or crack in the formation led into the top, just about the 400-foot level. During an ancient volcanic activity the ore had been forced to this point forming very rich veins, but this crevice had allowed it to pour through, filling the cavity. It was one of those strange things that happen in nature, very seldom of course, but nevertheless, they do occur. The whole activity had been flashed on my consciousness in a moment, as all truly cosmic flashes do occur. I marked the spot, then went on with the others to examine the new strike. It was tremendously interesting. The two walls of the vein had suddenly widened in their formation, and at that point, the large body of ore had been created, but it was not more than a tenth as large as the one I had marked. Just at this time, Bob Singleton was called away by one of his men, and I had a chance to explain to Rex and his father what I had been shown by beloved Saint Germain. I knew positively it was by his power that I had been enabled to see within the formation and mark its location. Rayburn decided immediately to have a cross-cut tunnel run in from the spot I had marked to contact the ore body that had been revealed to me. When Singleton returned, Rayburn gave the order to have the men start work at once on this cross-cut. The superintendent looked at him in perfect amazement. However, none of his men ever thought of questioning anything he suggested, and Bob began making arrangements at once to carry out the order. Rayburn did give him a little explanation by saying, "Bob, I know you do not understand why I am having this done, but when this special work is accomplished, I will explain." "Mr. Rayburn," said Singleton with a gentle, humble dignity, "it will always be my pleasure to carry out your orders without question. I wish," continued Rayburn, "you would put the most rapid and trustworthy men on this part of the work. Use 3 shifts, and finish it as quickly as possible. How many feet can the men break down in 24 hours? I asked the superintendent. "I think at least 10 feet, he replied, "more or less, according to the hardness of the rock." At that rate, I felt they would be able to reach the ore body in about 10 days, and I could have almost shouted for joy because I knew there was no uncertainty about what they would find when they reached it. Rex and I liked Bob Singleton very much, for he seemed a man of fine, strong character, though very young for the type of position he held. He left us as soon as we came out of the mine, for there was a shipment of ore to be sent out that afternoon. "I have wired the foreman at the ranch," Rayburn explained, "that we will not return for 2 weeks unless something vitally important demands it, because I wish to stay here and watch the progress of the new crosscut tunnel." The days passed quickly, the work went steadily ahead, and we occupied our time riding, hiking, and enjoying the music that Nada and Rex gave us on the Arabian instrument, Bob Singleton joining us at dinner several times. The work on the tunnel cut through 48 feet the first 5 days. Each of the men received a bonus of $1 a foot, and Singleton $50 for the good work accomplished. Bob asked Nada and Rex if they would sing for the men one evening while at the camp. They both agreed, and Nada, as a surprise for everybody, wired to Denver for Arabic costumes, and when they appeared for their first number, the men almost went wild with joy. The program closed, and one of the men arose and asked if they might all shake hands with the children in gratitude for the evening's wonderful entertainment. The children agreed and said afterward that they had never felt such inspiration or such power in their voices. Both felt the Master Saint Germain had been present and used the opportunity to pour his radiation through the music to the men, thus raising their consciousness and loyalty to a still greater height. This was his way of neutralizing the influence that had attempted to enter through Grey, which had been unable to accomplish its nefarious purpose. At 12 o'clock on the 11th day, I was in the office of the mine with Bob Singleton when a man came rushing in, greatly excited, saying they had struck rich ore in the new crosscut. The superintendent looked at me utterly speechless, so plainly did he show his surprise. It was then I realized that he had really never dreamed of finding ore in the new workings. Merely by the use of ordinary geological observations, this ore body never would have been located, for geologists seldom take into consideration the freakish formations that sometimes occur in nature, and that she does occasionally extraordinary things. This deposit would never have been found except by the superhuman power of our beloved master. Singleton asked me to find Rex and his father and tell them the news. I hurried to the camp quarters and found them awaiting me at lunch. When I told of what had happened, we all silently gave praise and thanks to the beloved mighty IAM presence, and our blessed Saint Germain for making this rich strike possible. Rayburn sent word to Bob that we would be ready to go with him and examine the new discovery at 1:30. Nada decided to await our report. When we reached the spot, I saw the last shots had broken well into the ore body, as the entire face of the tunnel was in ore. Bob instructed Daniel Rayburn, sample this strike and push the work as fast as possible, that we may determine its extent. I will, Bob replied, and went on to explain, the formation in the ore deposit itself is much more easily drilled and broken than the ordinary rock. As we returned to the surface, he could stand it no longer and burst forth. Mr. Rayburn, this is the most remarkable thing I have ever read or heard of in all my life. How did you know the ore was there? No outer signs indicated it. Bob, my boy, he replied, have patience. You will soon know. We shall prolong our stay another 10 days, and if I am not mistaken, they will make twice the speed in the ore body itself as they did getting to it. Keep this ore entirely separate from all the rest in the mine. I will explain the reason why later. That evening at dinner, Mr. Rayburn asked Nada, Rex, and myself to meet with him at 8 o'clock. I suggest, he began, as soon as we were all seated, that we take Bob Singleton into partnership with us as general manager of the entire mine, including what in the future will be known as the Master Discovery. I think he had better select an assistant of whom we all approve. I feel certain he can be trusted as one of us. We have every evidence before us that all our beloved master said of the ore body is physically true. However, let us say nothing to Bob of this until the tunnel drift is through. The following days were filled with great activity and tremendous interest as the work progressed. Almost every evening, Bob was invited to dine with us that all might become better acquainted. 20 days after the ore body was reached, the tunnel drift was through to the opposite side, a distance of fully 200 feet, and Rayburn was more than happy that we had waited to learn the extent of it. The evening the tunnel was finished, he announced at dinner that Bob was to be taken in as one of the partners, and while the Master Discovery really belonged to Nada and Rex, they wanted him to share a certain specified interest in the mine also, in addition to his salary. Then he explained how the ore body came to be discovered. He gave a short description of our beloved master, Saint Germain, telling of the protection he and his family had been given for years, of the recent attempt upon his life, and his escape. Tears of gratitude and joy streamed down Bob's cheeks as he tried to express his appreciation. Your deep feeling, said Rayburn, proves your sincerity to me beyond question. We shall all feel a great love for you, Bob, and I am certain you can be trusted as one of us. I thank each of you, said Bob with sincerity, and I will do my best to prove worthy and true to the trust you place in me, and for your very great kindness. It was then we learned that Bob had a sister, Pearl, of whom he was very fond, and who was his only living relative, with the exception of an aunt with whom she lived. I expect Pearl, he continued, to reach here tomorrow, as she is coming on to visit me for a time. He was very enthusiastic in his praise of her and drew forth her picture from his pocket. She was about 18, remarkably good-looking, and yet one felt she had tremendous strength of character with a natural sense of poise and command. He told Daniel Rayburn of the desire he always had to provide the means for her university training, and with his recent good fortune of sharing in the mine, this became possible of accomplishment. The following day, Nada, Rex, Bob, and I drove to the station to meet Pearl. As the train stopped and the passengers were alighting, we saw someone rush into Bob's arms. It made us realize how dearly they loved each other. That evening Bob told her of his new interest in the mine and the good fortune that had come to him. Later, when she met Daniel Rayburn, she threw her arms about him and kissed him in deep gratitude for his kindness to Bob. She tried to thank him, but he said, she was about 18, remarkably good-looking, and yet one felt she had tremendous strength of character with a natural sense of poise and command. He told Daniel Rayburn of the desire he always had to provide the means for her university training, and with his recent good fortune of sharing in the mine, this became possible of accomplishment. The following day, Nada, Rex, Bob, and I drove to the station to meet Pearl. As the train stopped and the passengers were alighting, we saw someone rush into Bob's arms. It made us realize how dearly they loved each other. That evening Bob told her of his new interest in the mine and the good fortune that had come to him. Later, when she met Daniel Rayburn, she threw her arms about him and kissed him in deep gratitude for his kindness to Bob. She tried to thank him, but he said, time passes rapidly when all is joy and harmony, and this is one of the great laws of life. If humanity would but comprehend the imperative need for its operation in their lives and understand the vital factor it becomes in their conscious use, we would be living in a most marvelous world more quickly than we can possibly realize now. We made a long detour while returning, but arrived home at 8 o'clock, ready for the splendid dinner that awaited us. We all seemed a little tired by the long drive except Pearl. The newness of the scenes kept her interest so aroused she seemed not to feel anything but the great happiness of the experience. We retired early, deeply grateful to the mighty IAM presence, for the wonderful blessings it had bestowed upon us.